A domestic direct action protest group, Palestine Action, was proscribed as a terrorist organisation by Home Secretary Yvette Cooper last month. Since then, over 200 protesters, many of them elderly, have been arrested by police under counter-terror law after illegally holding signs in public reading, and I quote, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action." Others have also been arrested for holding signs or wearing pro-Palestinian clothes that are perfectly legal. But following a High Court judge granting a judicial review of the Home Secretary's decision to prescribe the group, a hearing will now take place in November that could see the ban overturned. Before then, though, protest group Defend Our Juries has organised a mass demonstration of civil disobedience. As several hundred people may risk arrest on Saturday to protest the prescription of Palestine Action, potentially testing the Metropolitan Police Force's capacity to detain them all. And The Guardian has reported that prison bosses are clearing space for arrested demonstrators amid concerns that some jails are close to capacity, though that's the result of anti-migrant protests as well. Appearing on Sky News today, Yvette Cooper, a Home Secretary, was asked about the mass action.
Is the government happy to see hundreds of people out this weekend in support of Palestine Action being arrested?
Well, the prescribing process is based on detailed security assessments and security advice to me as Home Secretary, and I have to take that immensely seriously. It's based on violent action and injuries that this group has taken, including on national security targets, but also injuries to people, and also some disturbing information referring to future planning as well. So that's the information that I have to take immensely seriously when making those prescribing decisions. I do understand there will be people who do not know, who are wanting to protest, who do not know what the nature of this group is. Let's be clear, this is not about Palestine or protesting about Palestine. This is about a particular narrow, specific group that has both a violent record and information and about future planning as well. More of that information is likely to be revealed once court cases come through and can't be in advance. But I would say to people, this is not a non-violent organisation.
Now, Yvette Cooper hasn't provided any evidence to back up those claims. She hasn't shared that disturbing information relating to supposed Palestine Action plans, nor has she clarified what she means by the true nature of this group. It's unclear language that's designed on purpose to be vaguely sinister, and we're just supposed to believe her. But if Yvette Cooper is really interested in something potentially sinister, she may want to look closer to home. This is a report from The Guardian today. Lord Richard Dannett, a life peer in the House of Lords and former head of the British Army no less, urged ministers to crack down on Palestine Action at, wait for it, the request of US defence firm Teledyne. And a police officer was so concerned by what he saw as Dannett's attempt to have, quote, input into a police investigation, into an attack on a Teledyne factory, that he reported it to his superior officer. In 2022, Palestine Action activists caused damage to a Teledyne factory in Wales. That's when the investigating officer, Sergeant Alex Stewart, encountered Dannett, who has been a paid advisor to the firm since 2022, despite being a British lawmaker with enviable access to ministers and MPs, although maybe that's the point. The Guardian reports this. Stewart had spoken with the general manager of the factory in the UK. She had told him that a senior Teledyne executive based in the US had, quote, spoken to Lord Richard Dannett about Palestine Action. Stewart, this is the police officer, wrote, quote, Lord Dannett was chief of the Army General Staff. He's now a life peer. He has an invested interest in the aspect of UK trade and investment, particularly military projects. Essentially, there has been an indication that he wants this case to be explained and he wants to have some input on it. They haven't explained exactly what he wants. However, I have told them that it would not be wise to have a member of the House of Lords poking around in a live criminal case. Isn't it insane that that has to be pointed out to somebody who is the head of the army? It would not be wise to have a member of the House of Lords poking around in a live criminal case. No shit. He added, I have explained that they need to establish what Lord Dannett wants. He wrote that if the peer was concerned in general about Palestine Action's tactics, he should talk to senior police officers at a national level. It's not best placed for him to actively speak with an investigation team about the matter in the way that I think he wants to. Later that day, a DCI replied to Stewart, quote, "The Chief Constable is aware of the case and has received an update, whilst Lord Dannett has every right to communicate with the force regarding matters of concern. It does not mean that the matters he raises receive the response that he may want." I mean, I just don't believe, I don't agree with that. He doesn't know, he doesn't actually. Lord Dannett, if he's paid by a business, does not have a right to contact police officers in matters regarding that business. My opinion, actually. Now, during a 2023 criminal court case in which one of the activists involved in the attack was prosecuted, the judge ruled that Lord Dannett was not relevant to the trial and said that the peer had not tried to interfere in the case. The judge did, however, allow Sergeant Stewart's evidence to be heard, though he ruled that Dannett should not be named. But if he's not so significant or relevant, why not? He did nothing wrong after all. Now, Dannett told The Guardian that the sergeant's allegations were, quote, unfounded, and he also pointed to the judge's view that he had, quote, nothing to do with the trial. But The Guardian has more detail on the ways Dannett is alleged to have acted on behalf of Teledyne over Palestine Action. According to the Campaign Against Arms Trade, Teledyne UK has been granted several arms export licenses to Israel since the country's assault on Gaza began. And in December 2022, Dannett had a call with the manager of the Welsh factory and a senior member of Teledyne. The Guardian reports this. Dannett told The Guardian that Teledyne had contacted me to seek my assistance in raising concerns by the company to the government with regards to attacks on their premises. He added, "They briefed me on the Palestine Action attacks, and I then agreed to write to the Home Secretary." Dannett then wrote the promised letter to the Home Secretary, who at that time was Suella Braverman, using a paper headed with, quote, "General Lord Dannett, GCB, CBE, MC, DL," and addressed from the House of Lords. Dannett said that, quote, "The threat from Palestine Action has more widespread implications for security and the economy within the United Kingdom." The peer also wrote this. The slow pace at which the British legal system has been working to take action against those involved in the trespass and criminal action resulting from such, quote, direct action has served to embolden Palestine Action and their continued recruitment drive for individuals who are prepared to commit arrestable offences. Now, in that letter, Dannett disclosed that he was a paid advisor to Teledyne. But he also told Braverman that he would be, quote, very grateful to receive assurance that the threat from Palestine Action is fully recognised by our security services and appropriate action either planned or being taken. And he added that he had, quote, undertaken to brief the Teledyne main board in the US that the threat from Palestine Action in the UK is being suitably addressed. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy. He's paid by the company. He thinks he can do this? Wild. I mean, this is the stuff we know about, right? You know, somebody that's so comfortable with this kind of carry on makes you wonder, how often have they done it? In 2024, Dannett wrote another letter, this time to Labour Home Office Minister Dan Jarvis. This is also from The Guardian. Dannett once again disclosed his role. Under the same letterhead, he said he would be, quote, very grateful to receive assurance from the current government that the threat posed by Palestine Action continues to be fully recognised by our security services and that appropriate action is being taken. This is wild. How can you take a salary from a US firm and then you're making representations, one presumes on their behalf, they're paying you, to surveil and potentially undermine the civil liberties of people in this country? I don't think this is what legislators are meant to do. I could be wrong. Clearly, Lord Dannett disagrees. And now, this isn't Dannett's first time being accused of using his unelected position as a lawmaker to lobby for overseas firms. In March, The Guardian reported that Dannett had told undercover reporters he could arrange meetings with ministers for a potential client, despite a House of Lords ban on lobbying. There was this video evidence too.
Well, again, the first thing is I would need to do is to find out who the minister in the House of Lords was who was responsible. If it was ideally someone I knew, I could have an opening conversation. If it was someone that I didn't know, I'd make a point of getting to know them and then having that conversation.
He He clearly thinks this is normal and acceptable. Which begs the question, how often has he done it, like I said? In response to the report, Dannett disagreed that he'd broken the House of Lords Code of Conduct. He is now, however, unsurprisingly, under investigation over 2 sets of allegations around lobbying. But, unsurprisingly, Dannett's record goes much further back, all the way to 2012, when the Sunday Times caught him out in a different undercover investigation into former military chiefs. The piece on Dannett begins, amazingly, like this. Lord Dannett knew there was no better place to impress the 2 executives seeking his services in his weekday apartment in an exclusive gated residence that no amount of money could buy. The front door of his private lodging in the Tower of London is guarded by a beefeater, and as the former head of the army was quick to point out, its former occupants included Thomas More, Guy Fawkes, and Anne Boleyn. "Is this all yours?" inquired one of the visitors as she was ushered into his drawing room overlooking the Thames. "It's the Queen's, really, without getting too picky about it," Dannett replied. What's going on? The undercover reporters posed as 2 executives looking to sell weapons to the British Armed Forces. The Sunday Times subsequently reported this. The executives had called on Dannett, who holds the ceremonial position of Constable of the Tower, to discuss hiring him to lobby for a South Korean company that wanted to sell a cutting-edge drone to the British Armed Forces. The former army chief would be given a role on the company's advisory board, but the executives made no bones about it. What they really wanted were his contacts. The fee on the table was £100,000 a year for 2 days' work a month, which Dannett described as, quote, reasonable. It quickly became clear that Dannett, a former advisor to David Cameron, was no stranger to this kind of backdoor lobbying. He told the reporters he was preparing to circumvent government procurement rules by engineering a dinner meeting with the top civil servant at the Ministry of Defence, MOD, so that he could lobby for a £400 million contract. Surprise, surprise, he's besties with David Cameron. According to that Sunday Times article, Dannett retired from the military, the lump sum of up to £260,000, and has an annual pension of about £90,000 a year from a pension pot of £1.7 million. And remember, of course, he's a lord. He's paid to go to the Lords when he bothers to turn up, as well as his lobbying gigs. At the time, Lord Dannett denied he had any interest in breaching the House of Lords rules and said any suggestion to the contrary would be defamatory. I bet he said that. Crazy, right? What a crazy story. What a ridiculous story. What do you think? And by the way, look, we're psyoped by the media into thinking that people like Lord Dannett are the best of the best. The head of the British Army, in the House of Lords. We have the most meritocratic, competent system on God's green earth. It couldn't be any different. Maybe we're wasting a ton of money on really useless people leading to really stupid outcomes. Just a thought. Carl, what's your view on the House of Lords? Should we get rid of it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's kind of like facilitates massive corruption and lobbying. Like, many of these lords never participate in debates, never vote or very rarely vote, and essentially just use the peerages as a way to solicit corruption. But I think the thing that I love about Lord Dannett is that he seems to have got himself into hot water because he's been particularly oafish about the way that he's gone around this. Plenty of other politicians take money from arms companies or foreign states and do lobbying on their behalf. Like he was daft enough to get involved in a particular legal case and sort of get his hands dirty. But when you look at the prescription of Palestine Action, the person who did the legwork for all of that was John Woodcock, Lord Walney, who was the government's anti-extremism advisor, and he's funded by both the Israel lobby and the arms lobby. Yvette Cooper, who pushed for the prescription of Palestine Action, it came from the Home Office. Elbit Systems, the Israeli arms lobbyist, largely targeted by Palestine Action, had meetings and emails with the Home Office urging for the retrial of Palestine Action activists, and they coordinated between the government and the arms lobbyist. And of course, Lord Dannett is a fool for going about it in such an uncouth and obvious way, but he probably feels a little bit hard done by simply because he wasn't refined enough in the way that he went about it. If he did this a little bit smarter, then he could be Home Secretary or he could be the government's anti-extremism advisor and making the same money on behalf of the same clients and avoided any of the trouble that he's now found himself in. But yeah, of course, it goes deeper than just this one issue. Like corporate lobbying corrupts the entirety of British politics and distorts policy in the interests in favour of those special interests. And the House of Lords, in particular, is notorious for it.
Yeah. The single best anti-corruption thing we can do, anti-corruption drive, first policy, scrap the House of Lords. Right? You save a ton of money. You'd probably make it much easier to pass legislation. Well, not probably, you would. And by the way, Norway has one chamber, not two. It seems to work okay as a country. They seem to be doing okay in Norway. And you cut out a bunch of corruption. The point is, these corrupt, powerful people have a lot of influence in the media. That's why talking about getting rid of the House of Lords is not on the table. Which, by the way, in terms of a centrist uni-party blob, it's the House of Lords. It's the House of Lords. It's the unelected House of Lords. I would go as far as to say that the laws before 97, when it was literally Lords, when it was literally hereditary Lords, was better than this. Pure Blair to get something that was really screwed up and antiquated, and to replace it with something which is somehow worse and more corrupt. Pure liquid Tony Blair. Let's go to your comments quickly. I want to read this out, actually. There's a comment here about Scotland, as the president would say. Aaron and Novara in general. Why don't you discuss reform UK and Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales? The situation's completely different. Out with your little England bubble, Novara in general. That's just not true. By the way, it's not true. Reform are polling first or second in Wales. Generally second. There's one poll that has them first. Reform. They're polling second in Scotland, mate. I'm sorry. The argument of like, Wales and Scotland have a completely different political geography to England is less true now than it was 5 years ago. Reform are ahead of Labour in Scotland and Wales, in basically all the polls I've seen from the last 2 months. So I think that's a bit of cope. Don't mean to be mean, it's a bit of cope. Yes, Reform is doing extraordinarily well in England. It's primarily an English party, but it's doing really shocking. That actually to me is the big shock. If Reform came first in elections to the Senate next year, they won't come first in Scotland, of course they won't, but they can come a very healthy second in Holyrood, but they could win the Senate. So I'm afraid I just don't agree. It's not a little England bubble. You look at any data over the last couple of months, and actually Reform is doing surprisingly well in Scotland and Wales.